So this is the 2020 year roundup on how innovation has changed and how we can build software for the new normal. My name is Craig St. Jean. I am an OutSystems MVP and the director of the OutSystems Center of Excellence at Netlink. Netlink is a sales, delivery, and training partner of OutSystems, and we've been the partner of the year for the last 3 years in a row. We also have a large .NET practice, large business intelligence practice, and a few others as well. I just come from the OutSystems section of the company. And if you're not familiar with our partner today, we're working with OutSystems. OutSystems is a modern application development platform. It allows an organization to very quickly build applications and deliver value fast. It also allows not just developers, but technical business analysts and other team members to contribute to the development process. Netlink has implemented a significant amount of OutSystems projects for our clients and empowered our users, our clients' users to exceed goals, support IT, and dramatically shorten time to market. I would love to introduce our honored guest today, Devin Parsons. Devin is the VP and Head of Digital Transformation at bswift. Devin?
Thanks, Craig. Hey, I appreciate being here, and it is a fantastic turnout. So I do hope we get some time for some discussion as well. I think that would be really helpful. Just a couple of words about bswift and where we fit into the world and my role at bswift. So bswift is a health and welfare benefits administration firm, and the easiest way to describe what we do is when you enroll in your health plan, vision, dental, pet insurance, all of those great benefits that you enroll in every year around this time. If your employer is one of our clients, you will use our software as well as our people and processes to do that. And bswift is part of the CVS Health family of companies, which means that we are a wholly owned operating unit of CVS Health. We're a small company, about 1,000 people, a few $100 million in top line, and we sort of exist into this world of the giant CVS $250+ billion company. So it's a pretty exciting place to be. And my role at bswift as head of digital transformation is to identify and drive the introduction and ultimately adoption of next generation technologies, as well as the operating models, organizational models, and cultural transformation required to take advantage of them. And in my tenure, that has included technologies like OutSystems, as well as next generation service center technology and cloud-based technologies around artificial intelligence, driving higher assisted service as well as self-service results.
Thank you, Devin. So to kick us off, here are some of the topics we're going to be discussing. And so first, I want to talk about how we can deliver more value faster and with less effort by leveraging a low-code platform, specifically OutSystems, and how that's really applied to bswift. So Devin, can you speak a little bit to that to get us going?
Absolutely, and I want to start, kind of by acknowledging that OutSystems is often thought of as a technology platform, right? You've got .NET today. What could OutSystems do to make things better, faster, cheaper? And that's absolutely true that it is a technical platform, but backing up to what bswift needed to do, it really had nothing to do with whether we're a Java shop, a .NET shop, whether we have Salesforce, whether we have OutSystems. Those things were pretty irrelevant. But our mandate was clear, and that was to transform our business. When I joined 3 years ago, we had about, 35 million top line. We had a few hundred employees, and we served employers that had, a few dozen to a few thousand employees. So small to mid-market. That was our niche, and we did it super well, and we were pretty profitable at it. The mandate was to pivot from the small to mid-market to the jumbo market. So in our business, health and welfare benefits administration, the jumbo market meant employers with hundreds of thousands of employees. So we're going from selling a client with 10,000 employees. That was a huge win when I started. I mean, we rolled out, we rolled out the party for that. I mean, we had beer, and that was a big deal. Our most recent client that we just went live with in the past couple of months has around 400,000 employees. And that all took place in less than 3 years. So that's the business backdrop around what we were trying to do. And we knew we couldn't get there doing what we had done for the past 15 years of our existence as a company. We knew we needed to do something significantly different that allowed us to collapse time to market while still ensuring that we preserve the integrity of what is extraordinarily sensitive information and systems, right? We're talking about HIPAA-regulated systems. We're talking about some of the most sensitive healthcare data out there. And we know that our clients have absolutely zero tolerance for error. And so that was the big pivot point. How do we get from small to giant? How do we do that? Self-funded. We took no investment whatsoever from Aetna, CVS, or anyone else, completely self-funded, but we had to collapse the ability to deliver product, specifically software product, from quarters and years down to weeks and months.
Yeah, thank you, Devin. And in order to accomplish that, I know one of the big things that OutSystems offers is significant code reuse capabilities, as well as a lot of very advanced built-in systems, such as dealing with multi-tenancy. So can you speak to a little bit about how those capabilities have helped bswift?
Yeah, absolutely. So every business is different, but in our business, absolute multi-tenancy is a prerequisite to staying in business. We have tens of thousands of clients, and there is absolutely no way, technically or operationally, that we could support them at margin by spinning up, right, instances of things. Even if we reuse the underlying source code and spun up another instance, it would never work. So our solution is completely multi-tenant. We have one instance of our core transaction processing system, and we have one instance of our core customer experience platform, which is built on OutSystems. And the ability to invest in the architecture of that customer experience platform, building out components, building out controls, building out logic flows, and then reusing them, not copying them, but reusing them on a configuration basis across the hundreds of clients that we will implement in a given year is absolutely critical for us. Can you do that in the .NET or the Java world? Sure you can, and we have done it. We have done it to a very, very impressive degree. But to do it in the OutSystems world, I mean, you're talking about collapsing time to market down by a factor of 3 to 10, depending on your use case, right? So a factor of 3 with highly technical transaction processing components, and a factor of 10 with more user-facing customer experience type solutions.
Yeah, thank you. And before we move on to the next topic, does anyone of the attendees want to speak a little bit to some of the challenges that they may have had building multi-tenant systems or getting value out of their current technical stack? Just kind of a open discussion if anyone would like to add in.
And Craig, while everyone's thinking about a response there,
Yeah.
one other thing I want to add, which maybe it's obvious, but it wasn't completely obvious to us until we got into it. So there's reuse across a given application, which we take extensive advantage of with OutSystems. But the other thing which is important to us is there's reuse across applications. So for example, we have a customer experience solution built on OutSystems that the employees of our clients use to enroll in their benefits, for example. We also have a call center solution built on OutSystems, which our call center agents use when our employees call us. And those are two completely different applications, but they leverage much of the underlying OutSystems configuration base that we developed once, and then simply attached to those two applications. So it's a pretty classical use case, but compared to .NET, for us it is dramatically more efficient to do that in OutSystems than it would be to hand code all of that sort of cross-application leverage.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that kind of reminds me of one example I was working with the customer. We were using Vonage for their web video and audio capabilities. So, you can imagine use cases from call centers to doctors trying to communicate with their clients and so on. And, we were able to use those components for not just something where a doctor's trying to communicate with a patient, but then also internal escalations. Maybe with a case where someone has to escalate something to their supervisor, they can just hit that call button and really quickly be connected to them because of that reuse that's built into the platform.
Yeah, in a corollary there, and your comment reminded me of this is, so there's code reuse, and then there's also systems integration agility. And we've made extensive use of OutSystems' ability to integrate into our other systems, whether it's transaction processing systems, telephony platforms, workflow, case management platforms. And this is one that I'm super, I'm excited about. It's a little weird, I know, but so we have an existing case management platform that we purchase on a licensed basis, a subscription basis. And we're currently in the process, we've written an OutSystems front end on top of that. So the end users of it don't know what it is, right? They only see the OutSystems custom UI written on top of it. Right. And now we have the opportunity, using OutSystems built-in workflow capability, to swap out the licensed workflow case management platform with OutSystems-based platform for which we own the IP. And when we execute on that program, we will free up direct third-party expense that will, I won't say it will completely fund the OutSystems group, but it will go a long way at directly funding all of the other work that we do in perpetuity. And that's a win. You don't get those wins all the time, right? I mean, a lot of times you have to go out and spend more money to deliver more value, but that's an example of a win where we're going to save millions, our customers are going to get a better solution, and we're going to have, all sorts of extra revenue to direct towards things that are more meaningful than paying a third-party license.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll go ahead and move on to the next topic where we can talk more about the new normal. But if anyone wanted to continue that discussion later, then we're free to stick around and we can have that discussion. So on digital trends emerging from COVID-19, this sort of new normal, can you tell me a little bit about how COVID-19 has changed bswift, whether it's supporting systems of people working from home, or what you've had to do in order to continue providing value as the organization has shifted? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I just kind of to start this off a little bit. Just want to acknowledge, the COVID pandemic has been, a horrible impact to society, around the world. There's no way around that. But I'm, sort of the eternal optimist, and so in the midst of all of this chaos, as someone once wrote many years ago, there's always opportunity. And for us, we see the opportunity in this COVID pandemic to ensure that our employees and our partners are able to focus on what's valuable for our clients today, right? And that's changed a lot, but also what's going to be important for them coming out of the pandemic, and position ourselves not just to get by. There's a lot of companies who are just struggling to get by. We want to position ourselves to get ahead, and to create, that win-win-win scenario across the board where our employees can be successful, our clients can be successful, and ultimately, bswift can be successful. So what we saw when the COVID pandemic hit, I was on a call with our leadership talking about how we were going to move our call center agents from office-based roles to remote roles, and we thought we had 4 or 5 weeks if we were going to have to do it. The next day after that call, we closed all of our offices worldwide, and everybody was out the door working from home the next day. And fortunately, we didn't miss a beat. We had the technology in place. We had the processes in place to make that happen. But that moment really emphasized to us that things were very different, right? And our clients started to come to us with needs that were very different than what they had yesterday. And we knew we were going to have the agility, the organizational agility, right, to be able to respond to that, but also the technical agility to be able to pivot from going down one path to going down a completely different path when our clients are looking for us to deliver in days. They needed some of these solutions tomorrow. So they were looking at extremely fast turnarounds from us. I won't say that it was completely smooth, but I will say that within 24 hours, our entire workforce was productive from wherever they were in the world, with all of our offices globally being shut down.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how that all shifted so quickly. And as I understand it too, bswift has also made some adjustments due to everyone being remote in your hiring practices as well. And I've seen this trend with other organizations, where they were very location specific and now not as much. Can you speak a little bit to how that applies to bswift?
Yeah, bswift prior to COVID was very location specific. We were a Chicago company, and the vast majority of our workforce came to work every day at 10 South Riverside Plaza, for those of you in the Chicagoland area, right above the commuter rail tracks in the West Loop. I mean, that was our culture. That was what we were built on, and that changed overnight. And what it allowed us to do, right? So you got to take advantage of that. Are there drawbacks? Absolutely. Would we have done it without COVID? Absolutely not, at least not as quickly. But you got to take advantage of that. And what we began to be able to do is to look across the world for talent, irrespective of where in the world they happen to be. And it did two things. So it drove a change to how we hired, specifically how we hired OutSystems talent, but it went beyond that. And it also changed our approach to partnerships. And it allowed us to think more broadly about how and to what extent we partner with other organizations to drive scale and to further collapse time to market in our product development efforts. I would say we're 80% of the way down that journey, and it's been transformative for bswift in some ways that are maybe challenging to us as an organization, right? Change is, always involves loss, but it's also been transformative in that it has allowed us to think and act and feel like our biggest competitor, which is 10 times our size. I mean, we're winning deals from our biggest competitor on a regular basis. And without that global reach and that global perspective, that may have been different, may have been a different result there.
Yeah, and speaking of partnerships and relationships and so on, it's really been interesting how going remote has shifted culture, but then at the same time, with us being remote to even our coworkers, it's changed how we can communicate with everyone. And then as we start bringing in new partners or new organizations to work with, I think we're able to be a bit more effective in how we communicate and establish those relationships, given that everyone is a remote to begin with. So you bring on a new partner, for example, as you were mentioning, and
Yep.
you're talking to them just like you are your coworkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, again, you got to take advantage of the card you're dealt. So, you know, COVID dealt the cards to us, but at least for bswift, this is giving us the opportunity, and I'm pretty passionate about this, of creating completely seamless integrated teams across bswift employees and our partners. And I know everybody says they want to do this. I've said I want to do it for 20 years, but it's super, super hard to do. Right? Most organizations regress to using their, let's just say their offshore development team. That's sort of the B team, if you will. And the A team is, you know, wherever corporate HQ is. And work is handed out and then it comes back and we complain about quality. We're blowing that up at bswift. And COVID is helping, it's not quite the right word, but COVID is a catalyst for that change. So, you know, when we get through the first half of 21, we expect our distributed development teams, whether they get a paycheck from CVS Health or whether they get a paycheck from one of our partners, we expect those teams to be completely equal in their productivity, as well as in their ability to drive business value through these very agile Scrum teams and the structures that are put around that to manage the multiple scrums that we have operating in parallel.
Yeah, and speaking of 2021 and how we've had some of these hiring practices changes, you know, at Netlink. I don't want to say that there's any silver lining to COVID-19, of course, but the ability for us to now hire people in other regions is a permanent change for us. And so that's going to help us bring in more talent from other locations. So can you tell me a little bit about what bswift is doing going into 2021 to keep business going and continue delivering wins?
Yeah, so the first thing that we've acknowledged as being absolutely critical is we cannot find ourselves in a position of, we cannot find ourselves in a position of trying to maintain the status quo, right? This is not a time to keep the lights on, if you will. It's not a time to hunker down and just keep doing what you're doing. For bswift, 2021 is going to be a time to, really prove to our clients and to ourselves that we can leap ahead. Leap ahead of the competition, yes, but I see that as the least important aspect. But really leap ahead in our ability to deliver value to our customers. And are we going to describe it as taking advantage of COVID? No, we're not. But we have to use the opportunities that we have, and the opportunities that COVID has given us is to redefine who we are as an organization, redefine how we think about value and product, and then actually express that, right? That's a nice PowerPoint deck, but to actually express that and begin to dramatically scale up our ability to deliver product. And that's what we're going to do in 21.
Yeah, great. And just a reminder too, this can certainly be an open discussion if anyone wants to add in with any trends that they've seen from COVID-19 or anything that they're doing in 2021 to continue delivering wins. I'm going to keep on going, proceeding, but if there's something you want to add in, you can either add it in or comment afterwards.
Craig, sorry, that we do have one question from Alistar Peterson, and I believe he posted a little bit earlier. It's about multi-tenancy. Does that come easy to OutSystems?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't monitoring my chat. Yeah. Devin, did you want to take that, or would you like me to?
Yeah. So let me talk about it from a couple of different perspectives. So there's application multi-tenancy. And Craig, you may have a better way to describe that, but the idea that the OutSystems platform can support an arbitrary number of applications deployed in a unified way, and that's just native in the platform, right? That's just out of the box. And then there's another layer below that, which when we think of multi-tenancy, we think of it as the ability to support many different clients or customers with very distinct needs. So for example, our jumbo client A, if you go and look at the experience their employees receive, it's going to look dramatically different in both the graphic identity, the flow, and the function from client B, and client B is going to look dramatically different from client C. But underneath that layer, everything is consistent. So OutSystems absolutely supports that. The one thing I will, if you want to get a little bit more technical, the one thing I really will call out is the importance of data engineering, right? So you have to make sure that your own intellectual property that goes into creating the data structures to support your business supports your definition of multi-tenancy.
Yeah, and to add to that, when it comes to what OutSystems has built in, if you're building a new application or if you're modifying an existing one that's built in OutSystems, there's a toggle to enable that for multi-tenancy. And once you do that, any database entity or table that is marked as being multi-tenant, OutSystems will automatically add a tenant ID to those tables, and it will automatically query only against the currently logged in tenant automatically. And then there's various APIs built into the platform as well to switch between tenants or manage tenants. So it becomes much easier than if you're just hand coding it. So, if that's the use case that applies to you, then it's really built into the platform to make that as easy as possible without trying to, excuse me a second. Joys of live calls. Without limiting how you do your multi-tenancy. So yeah, thank you so much for that question. I'll go ahead and move on.
Just like one other quick comment, and I know we're getting, this is a little tangential to multi-tenancy, but we happen to be deploying our OutSystems solutions on in an on-premise instance, right? So rather than using the OutSystems cloud, we deploy it on-prem, but our premises is AWS. So we've been able to deploy our entire OutSystems-based application portfolio to a single deployment instance on AWS, and then build in the dynamic scaling, right? The elasticity once, and that elasticity then addresses all of the needs across all of our applications. And so that's a nice win. Not only does it allow us to use less resources, but it allows us to scale those resources regardless of which of our applications is under increased demand.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point too when it comes to delivering wins and moving into 2020. I think organizations that are more used to being in the cloud, Netlink, for example, I think we can kind of take that for granted a bit. But when it comes to what OutSystems offers you, being able to run in their cloud, which is in AWS and managed by them, being an option, but then also having the option of running in your own either data center or your own private cloud where you can manage scaling as it's appropriate to you, especially as we have all this different traffic now that we've got people working from home and VPN connections from employees and so on, having that ability to deploy in a manner that works for your organization is critical. And that's certainly something that OutSystems has offered. And I want to introduce our last talking point here as well. One of the things that has really benefited organizations in the past few years is this sort of agile transformation, getting away from waterfall and becoming more agile, both in project management, but then also being more agile just as a company in general. So Devin, what kind of advice or guidance do you have on how we can be more agile sooner than later?
So, I joined bswift about 3 years ago, and as I was acclimating myself to the organization and the culture, I was told we were an agile shop. At that time, it was .NET only, and what that meant, and I'm going to exaggerate for effect, but what that meant at the time was that we had groups of developers and analysts, and we called them a scrum team, and they had daily stand-ups that usually lasted for an hour or more. So that was agile. Exaggeration, yes, but what we were able to do when we started working with OutSystems, right? So you bring in a platform like OutSystems, which is designed to deliver product in weeks or a couple of months. You can't operate in a traditional way, right? You have to be agile, whether you want to use an uppercase A and use all of the ceremonies and conventions of Agile Scrum or not. You have to be agile. Your teams have to be self-contained, and you have to be prepared to move fast. So that was a huge catalyst for us. It wasn't always easy or smooth. People didn't always buy into it at the beginning. But when you have 6 weeks to write a new mobile app, you got to do it. Otherwise you shouldn't probably bother with a platform like OutSystems if you're not prepared to move fast. So it was a real catalyst for us. And we talk about advice. I guess my advice would be for organizations that are just getting into the agile world, to absolutely educate yourself, not about the mechanics of agile, right? Well, how do I do my daily stand-up and who should be invited to my retrospective? You'll figure that out. But back it up and think about what agile can mean to your organization from a business strategy perspective as you collapse time to market, and then flow from there. Because that's where the real value is not going to come from, having your developers go to a daily stand-up and do sprint planning. That's important, right? It's going to do good things, but it's not going to change the world. What's going to change the world is if you realize, oh, I didn't think there was any way I could enter the EMEA market until, 3 years out, but now I can do it next quarter. That's going to change the world.
Yeah, and the point about, starting small, I think is a really important one too. When I look back at one of my previous employers, the the organization tried doing a digital transformation at the same time as an agile transformation, at the same time as rolling out OutSystems with a significantly large project. And we had to go through quite a few resets and quite a few times of just starting over, because first, we didn't start small enough. And then second, we didn't have complete buy-in from the business. So we were ready after a couple of weeks to have something that we could actually give to customers that would benefit them. But our business wasn't ready to roll out something like that, or to have something that was kind of constantly evolving. And I know, Devin, I've heard you speak before about getting that business and marketing buy-in when it comes to being more agile. Maybe you can speak a little bit more on to this group about just how important that is.
Yeah, there's really two things there that come to mind, and you picked up on the first one a moment ago, which is to start small. I don't, to me, it wouldn't matter if I was doing this at CVS Health, hundreds of thousands of employees, or bswift, a few hundred. Start small. I started with 15 people when I stood up our low-code digital transformation team, and that was about 10 people too many. And I'm serious. So start small. 2 people, 3 people, 5 people. You don't need a huge IT department. You don't really need an IT department at all. So start small. And then the other piece, which we learned the hard way, is to make sure that there's alignment at the most senior levels of the organization, that the company strategically is prepared to take advantage of the potential that all of the other great work that you're thinking about doing on the technology side can provide. And I've said before that it's absolutely critical that your CEO or your board of directors or your investors can give your digital transformation / low code / agile pitch as well as you can, or better. And when you get to that point, when the CEO or the board or your investors are talking about how critical being agile is to the strategic success of the organization, and when they can articulate the role that low code plays in enabling that, you're in a really good spot. For bswift, we learned that a platform like OutSystems isn't a technology play, it's a business strategy play, even though I completely understand and acknowledge that it often begins on the IT side of the house. So for all of you CIOs or VPs of IT out there, that's super cool. It's not often you get the opportunity or the potential to redefine the work that IT does as technology strategy, or maybe even product strategy, but to redefine that as driving business strategy. So that's super exciting to me.
Yeah, and I do see we've got a question in chat, but I just want to, before I switch over to that, just one more kind of piece of advice that I've noticed is to be agile, or even really just effective as an organization, we have to be able to trust the people that we're working with. And with these different trends, everyone working from home, we really have to change how that's established. And so I think one small piece of advice that's really easy to do, but is kind of overlooked sometimes, is when you have calls with coworkers, turn on your webcam. Being able to just see someone and have body language and have at least some normality to what we had, is I found essential in continuing to build trust amongst people. And then as we're trying to be more agile and make these changes with how we want to move forward, even though it's such a small thing, it really does help being able to communicate in that manner.
Yeah. And have, this may be a bit controversial, but it's certainly my strong professional belief, is have the same set of expectations for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. So, make sure that you don't have OutSystems developers that are, corporate badged with one set of expectations, and OutSystems developers in, your partner organizations with a different set. Demand the same set of expectations of everyone in your organization that's performing a similar role. I know it's super hard to do, but it's super critical. And if you find yourself engaging with a partner and they want to play that sort of throw it over the fence, we'll bang the code out, throw it back, and hope it works role, I can tell you from firsthand experience to run away from that. That's not what's going to help your organization change the world.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And, and also along the lines of setting expectations, kind of furthering your point about having your, your executives and board and investors being able to talk about how agile you want to be. Everyone in the organization really has to have that same expectation as well. If you've got some internal lines of business folks that are expecting, these slower paced things, whereas IT is being expected to, deliver new applications every couple of weeks, or the other way around, it's just not going to work.
Oh, absolutely. Your whole organization has to be aligned. And importantly, the part of your organization that's responsible for adoption, whatever that means to you. I know what it means to bswift, whatever it means to each of your organizations. It's not going to do you any good to churn out 20 new mobile apps and 10 new websites in 6 months if you don't have the ability to drive adoption and derive value from that software product. So that's super critical. And when you get it right, when you get one person, and I've seen this happen personally, I've physically been there, and it's super exciting. When you get one person in business development or sales or whatever that organization is for you, that grabs onto what you're doing and runs with it, and then comes back and says, oh, guess what? I just fill in the blank, retained this client, closed this deal, upsold this client, penetrated this new market, whatever it is, then that's going to generate dramatic amounts of demand for your ability to deliver product. Super cool stuff.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me with my previous employers, we were starting to evaluate OutSystems, and one of the things that one of our team members did was build something to connect into an insurance claim system and pull out the status of claims for internal business people to see. And it was really just kind of a, hey, look what I can do. But they did it, in like a couple days of just starting to use OutSystems. And that really got people's eyes open. They're like, wait a second, what just happened? It's everyone was used to, it's like that should have taken, 3 to 6 months and budget and, all sorts of other things, UX developers. There's like, it really, people just kind of like just stared at like, I don't know what just happened, but that's awesome. So yeah, it's definitely an exciting thing to see. And I see Alistair in the chat has on that topic has asked, what is our shortest launch time from app concept to launch? COVID apps being an example of something where a quick turnaround might be very important. Devin, what would you say is your fastest or shortest launch time?
All right. So I have two answers to that question. So based on the investment that we've made over the course of 2020 and the work that we've done with Netlink and OutSystems, we're able to deploy what to our clients look like completely new apps in a matter of I'd like to say a few hours, because that's really what it takes. But when you wrap the administration around it, 2 or 3 days, right? And that was collapsed from weeks before at best. So that's the happy path, right? A few hours, but that required investment on our part to get there. The shortest launch time we've had for a completely net new app, so sit down to a blank OutSystems canvas and start coding, was 6 weeks from sprint 0 day one through production deployment. That was a mobile app that integrated into our back-end transaction processing system, integrated into our authentication system, and provided, I think it was about 25 or 30 screens of both user-specific information as well as transaction processing. So that was 6 weeks from start to finish, with finish being defined as general availability in the iOS and Android app stores. And that really got people's attention. And just real quick, so I mean, we're part of this big CVS Health family. With CVS owns Aetna, they own bswift. I had to get this new mobile app approved by the corporate digital governance board or committee or whoever. And so I read the instructions, and it said, submit your app for approval when you're halfway through the development cycle. So 3 weeks in, I sent the form in, and I said, we're halfway through the development cycle. I need your approval in 3 weeks. And I get this nasty gram back saying, rather frustratingly, you know, you didn't follow the rules. You should have submitted this months ago. There's no way we can possibly approve this in 3 weeks. You know, we need 6 months minimum, preferably 8. And what their expectations was that for a net new mobile app, they were expecting an 18-month development timeline.
Yeah.
They didn't know what to do with 6 weeks. We deployed it anyway. We'll work around that later, but we deployed it anyway. But that shows you some of the promise, 6 weeks, but also some of the challenges if your organization's used to 18 months.
Yeah, and I think one of the shortest from development to production of a brand new application that I've seen, also happened to be in Chicago, was working with a client where they were using Salesforce as well as a bunch of internal .NET APIs. And one of their common use cases was needing to migrate accounts within Salesforce, including all of their custom objects and any child objects. That was something that they just kind of had to do by hand. And while we were in training, while we were offering training with that client of ours, they said, you know, that situation came up, and we said, well, you know, why don't we start building out a suite of tools that the business users can use for things like this? And in a couple of days, we took this idea from development all the way into production of integrating with Salesforce and .NET and providing these capabilities. And sure, you know, it had a couple of features, but it was used on day one in production, and was starting to evolve and be built upon from there. So, I mean, it's really a story of, you know, empowerment of the people that were using the OutSystems platform, and then also of just that agility. It's, you know, hey, we don't have to plan for something when we have an obvious need and we can solve it. And that's what we were able to do there. Alistair also says different executives have a vastly different understanding and expectation of agile delivery. Most still think it is as waterfall agile. In my experience, I've heard it called agile fall or wagile. Yeah, I completely agree, and that kind of goes along the lines of setting expectations. Is also just making sure that people understand what those expectations mean, right? You know, so when we use the word agile, are we talking about business agility, or are we talking about agile development processes? And if we're talking agile development processes, are we talking about something like XP or Scrum? And what does that really mean for our organization? So yeah, I completely agree that having both the right expectations and the right language that everyone can really be on the same page is absolutely critical.
Yeah, there's a huge difference, and I'm in the middle of this now at Aetna. You know, there's a big difference between agile software development, agile product development, and an agile business.
Yep.
Capital A agile business. I mean, it's a huge difference, right? And it's not that you can't, you know, if you're a, you know, IT director or CIO, it's not that you can't jump into agile software development and then work your way into agile product development and then work your way, you know, it's not that you can't do that. But you have to make sure that your expectations are aligned, and you have to make sure if you're going to start on the technical side that you're able to effectively communicate what you're doing, how you're doing it, and why you're doing it to your functional colleagues so that over time they can start to buy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Alistair, thank you for that. And I do want to point out, I see that you've posted a link in the chat to a podcast on making remote work. So I'll check that out later, and if anyone else is interested. And I know
I just encourage, I mean, if there's other questions, I mean, guys, feel free to take yourselves off mute. I mean, please, I'd love it if there were more questions. I'd love to have the opportunity to respond to them. So please don't be shy.
Yeah, and I'm just going to toss the next slide on the screen so it's at least there. There's 6 minutes officially, but I still have plenty more time afterwards. So, you know, before you go, you know, sign up for the OutSystems free edition if you're curious. There's a link, or you can scan the QR code. It runs in the AWS cloud. You don't have to pay for database storage or anything else in the free edition, and you get the majority of features of the platform just right out of the box. And you're free to email me if you have any questions as well. My email's there. And I do want to thank bswift and OutSystems for being a part of this. So that being said, yeah, if anyone has a discussion that you want to add to this, you know, absolutely feel free to unmute yourself or put something in the chat. I assume that the security settings here are set so people can unmute? That'd be kind of important. Yes, yeah, you can unmute yourself if you want to. Yeah, thank you, Nick. It was great to have you. I'm just monitoring the chat here as well. So thank you, Nikki. Yeah, I'll stick around, you know, but again, thank you so much. You know, if you're heading off to other meetings or to lunch or so on, you know, have a great day, great rest of your week, great rest of the year. I'd love to speak to you more. If you want to speak more one-on-one, like I said, you know, reach out to me and we can talk more privately if you prefer. Otherwise, I'll hang around here for a bit if anyone unmutes and wants to discuss anything. And take care.
It's a quiet group.
Yeah.
I tell you, somebody has a question.
2-minute drill. What skills does a programmer need to bring to the table to transition over to learning the OutSystems platform and low-code solutions? That's a great question. So make sure that you're still on. Yep. So Robert, one of the things about low code is that you really don't need to have this significant programming expertise. When it comes to designing an enterprise solution in OutSystems and having appropriate database architecture, you still need to have some of those database skills, and you need to have an understanding of how abstractions work and things like that. But one of the things that OutSystems allows you to do is it allows you to empower even business analysts who are not used to programming to start delivering value. It works really well when they're hand in hand with templates or other tools that IT has created for them. But actually, that example that I gave you of the company that in a couple of days rolled something out to work with Salesforce and their .NET APIs, that was a business analyst who had never programmed before, and we did that the first week of them starting to learn OutSystems, dev to production. So, it's obviously that was with some hand holding, but to be able to jump in, it's really as long as you can think linearly and understand how things work, then it's really quite easy. The training that OutSystems offers is extensive. All of their training is free on their website. They've got guided paths, they've got videos, they've got exercises. If you want to learn how to be a mobile developer or a reactive web developer, they've got like a 32-hour course. I think it's 32 hours. That really takes you from not knowing anything about OutSystems to building, an equivalent to like IMDb for mobile, I think is the example, unless it's changed by now. And I've seen junior developers, right out of college that didn't have any honest programming experience beyond, just the algorithms and exercises that they studied, and with zero web knowledge, go from coming into the organization to being certified to develop in the OutSystems platform within 3 to 6 months. And I've also seen people that have, like I said, that they can at least business analysts who can think in a more technical level but haven't programmed can get on board even faster than that, in the right cases.
Yeah, we hired an individual straight out of undergrad with a technical degree, but like you said, no real world experience. And he became our most productive developer in a matter of 3 months, 4 months maybe. And he became, he moved from OutSystems developer to development lead, meaning that he was managing the work of 3 to 5 other people in under a year. And you just don't do that in .NET, or at least I don't see it done in the .NET world very often. So yeah, and it, like you said, it really broadens. We've pulled in people with no programming background, minimal programming background, like business analyst type people. As long as you can focus on the product that you're intending to build and its value, rather than the specifics of, I need to be a .NET engineer, you're going to be successful.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Chat or unmute yourself. Like I said, I've got plenty of time, so I'll stick around until there's no one left. So we can talk OutSystems, we can talk new trends, how organizations have shifted due to COVID or even agile transformations, digital transformations, and so on. Trina, you got any stories from OutSystems and how COVID has affected you guys?
Yeah, no, not that I want to share right now.
Fair enough.
Oh, well, the COVID stuff, I mean, this has nothing to do with OutSystems, but I mean, being part of CVS, we were briefed regularly from our chief medical officer and others, but things certainly look promising. I'm not a physician, so I can't speak to them personally, but from everything we're hearing, vaccine shipments, advanced shipments are already taking place. CVS itself is geared up to administer, potentially hundreds of millions of vaccines across the country, and preparing to take possession of vaccine supplies when it's been approved and appropriate. So, it looks like, in the coming months and quarters, things are going to get better, but still have a ways to go, I think.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to that.
And one thing, while we still have people on, I'm going to assume they're still listening. One thing that was super cool, again, nothing to do with OutSystems or Netlink, but Moderna Pharmaceuticals. I had the opportunity to hear their CEO speak long before they had a candidate vaccine in clinical trial. It might have been phase 1 clinical trials at the time, but he talked about the power of the technology that's available to us today. Things like cloud computing that simply wouldn't have been available even a couple of years ago. And their ability, you talk about collapsing time to market, they were talking about collapsing an 18-month computational research program, if you will, right, into finding vaccine candidates, collapsing that from 18 months to, a matter of weeks by leveraging some of the modern technologies that were available, the scale of cloud computing. It just really kind of points out that, had COVID happened a year ago or 2 years ago, it might have been a very different outcome in a very negative way for society. So I think that's a super cool example of how technology is changing the world.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I don't remember the name of the program, but that it was basically a community sourced protein folding simulation where it would send out work to different computers, and and now the amount of work that I don't know anything about developing vaccines, but I could just see cases where these simulations are just spun up on thousands of Amazon or Azure instances to run experiments to see how things affect different cells and what we know of the proteins in COVID and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what these new generation vaccines, these messenger RNA-based vaccines, that's exactly how they're developed. You spin up 200,000 cores on AWS, and you do the math, if you will, as opposed to the much more clinical development process that would have taken place in vaccines of the past.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating section of technology.
All right. Well, if there's no additional questions, I think we're safe to wrap, and then we'll reach out directly to all of the attendees with the e-gift lunch card, and then we'll be following up with more resources.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone that's still around. Take care. Have a great day, great week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.